What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Friday Night Chill with Will. This is episode 17. How y'all doing tonight? Hope you're all doing well. Sorry about last week. I was kind of dealing with I guess a blow to my ego, for lack of a better word. And, that just kind of made me not want to talk about what we're talking about tonight. I was planning on talking about Cosmic Fury last week, like right when it premiered, but it just didn't work out that way. And I think it worked out better because I was able to rewatch the whole thing. So I hope your guys' week has been good. Mine has been okay. Just kind of reeling from that whole experience. I don't want to go into too much detail as to what exactly it is because shit happens and things can change. So, I won't completely write it off, but at this moment in time, I will not be really thinking about the thing. Anyway, enough of me being vague. So yeah, man, Cosmic Fury came out last week, finally, after forever. And it's kind of weird. It's supposed to be the last season for a bit. And I don't know, just a lot of weird feelings surrounding this whole thing. But I guess to preface this, I don't know how important this actually is. To talking about it, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. There's a lot of discourse amongst the fandom because of the press screeners and stuff like that. And in case we're wondering, I was able to get access to that. Not in a traditional sense, but that is all I will say in terms of how I got that. But I was able to catch the screener of Cosmic Fury, so I saw it. I binged it all in a night. I think it was the 7th of September I saw it, and I just watched the whole thing in one night. And I had a good time. I had a great time. I thought it was super cool. It was so... What I enjoyed most about that whole thing, it wasn't so much the fact of, getting access to something first, because first of all, I don't think that's a thing people should be bragging about. I don't know exactly if people were bragging about that who did get the screener. If they were, then they probably shouldn't have gotten it to begin with, but whatever. I wasn't paying too much attention to the discourse surrounding it because it's just very unimportant, really, at the end of the day, and I wasn't really interested. It was more so I could tell it was just mostly a bunch of people being jealous because of course you're going to be jealous if you heard that someone got to see this thing that you're really excited about first. You know what I mean? So I understand all the emotions and stuff, all that behind it, but I don't know. It was just really weird. I didn't say anything about, getting access to it or anything until Cosmic Fury came out. If I wanted to, because I saw it, I could have made a video on it on the 27th because that's when the embargo on the show lifted, so you could talk about everything freely without, fear of retaliation from Hasbro, whatever that would look like for Power Rangers. And I had considered it, but considering the strikes were still going on, well, at least the writer's strike was still going on at the time, along with the actor's strike, it just felt weird making a video. And it still kind of does making this podcast about it, because, I don't know, it's just, we're right at the tail end of the actor's strike. I can tell, I just know they're gonna, the studios are getting ready to cave. Because they caved for the writers last week, gave them literally everything they asked for. It's great. We love to see it. And I can just tell they're getting ready to do that with the actors. It's just they haven't finished negotiations yet. They're supposed to be finishing up, I believe, Tuesday, is what I heard. Although I might be getting that confused with the speaker majority of the House of Representatives for the U.S., which is very different. Two very different things. But it's sometime within the next week they're going to be finishing up all that, and hopefully they'll just come to a deal, and the SAG, strike will be over, and then the Cosmic Fury cast can finally fucking talk about this goddamn show, and we can finally hear someone else's thoughts on it besides Simon Bennett, which is not a dig at the guy. He's doing what he can. He's the only freaking person on this show who worked on it, who can legally talk about it, because he's not a part of American unions. So it's just really frustrating. And I know that the cast is equally frustrated, because this thing is finally out, they've been really excited about, and they can't say anything. Hunter can't even do her little vague countdown thing anymore. That's all she had. Now she doesn't have anything. So yeah, anyway, I'm getting distracted. I'm going off on a whole bunch of little tangents or whatever, but what was nice about, going back to my original point, what was nice about watching this in the way that I did, early and all that stuff, is there was no noise of social media behind it. And I have not experienced Power Rangers like that in a very long time, I think. I can't even remember really the last time I experienced a season like that. Maybe RPM? And even still, I don't think so. It probably would have... No, because Jungle Fury, I was already dipping in on Ranger Board every now and then for episode discussions. Maybe Overdrive. Maybe Overdrive is the last time. I didn't have the noise of the internet, behind a premiere of a Ranger season. And that was honestly just so nice. I got to watch the thing, enjoy it for what it was. I got to see the whole thing. And then when I logged back in onto social media the next day, there was nothing. So I just got to kind of sit with it and just kind of think about the whole thing, which is kind of cool, because I think very rarely now, because we have things like Twitter and Threads, I guess people still use that, just because we have access to the internet and ways of just so many ways of getting our thoughts out immediately upon consuming some form of media. I think we don't take proper time anymore to actually watch the thing we're watching and try and digest what it is that we're actually looking at and what's actually happening. I think a lot of us are just, and I promise I'm not trying to single myself out, because I do the same thing, but I think a lot of us just are so curious to what others think about stuff that we immediately just want to just start discussions on stuff right away, and we don't want to take time to think about what we're watching. And having, because it was like I said, it was the 7th of September, and Cosmic Fury came out on the 29th. So that was 22 days I had, and I only watched it the once. I could only watch it the once. And so it was 22 days I had to just sit back and think about the 10 episodes that I had just sat through and watched and binged, and just kind of think about all of the story stuff that had happened, and really kind of fine-tune my thoughts on everything. And once it came time to actually watching the thing, because it's not very long. It's only 10 episodes, so it's only like 2.5, like 3.5 hours. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Whatever. It wasn't very long. I finished I finished it all in a night. They're only like 22-minute episodes. So I don't know. It was just, it was so nice to experience it in this way, and especially like with what's going on with the franchise, with them getting ready to take this break or whatever they're doing. And so it was just nice to just kind of like enjoy this and just kind of enjoy it fully for what it was. And when it came time to like actually sitting down to watch it, because I wanted to make sure I actually watched it in the first week at least, and I re-upped my Netflix subscription. I was able to catch some more stuff and pay attention and look out for stuff that I, maybe wasn't paying too much attention to the first time around. And what's also really nice about this entire like format, because that's one thing that I will like say like immediately, is this whole 10 episode format worked really well. I really liked it. It was very short, and I do think they could have stood to maybe give them a couple more episodes. I think if they would have done 12, either 12 or 13 episodes, they could have told the story they wanted to tell perfectly. Because I do think there was some like pacing stuff where they were at the end of the show and they were just like, all right, well, we don't have too much time to like focus on this thing, so we just kind of have to get through it really quick. So the it was just so nice the way this was paced, and it makes it so much more rewatchable, I think, in my opinion, more so than the other times they've done like 10 episode drops, because they've done similar drops to these, but usually it's a 22 episode season, and so they're dropping like 11 episodes, and it's a little bit different because it's only like half the story, whereas this time around it's like, no, it's the whole thing in these 10, 11 episodes, well, 10 episodes in this case. And yeah, I don't know, man, like there was just no time for really meandering on stuff, and that's really nice, because the past few seasons have kind of had that problem, but they've been getting away from it slowly but surely. One thing I did in the weeks leading up to the actual premiere date for Cosmic Fury is I did a full Dino Fury rewatch, because I hadn't really done that really since the shows came out, because I tried doing it at the beginning of the year, and then the episodes with Ollie happened, and he was just being a prick, and I was annoyed, and I just didn't want to deal with it, and so I kind of like gave up. And I didn't realize how much things were changing for the show, as Dino Fury progresses, because Dino Fury season 1 is very much, for me, and I know for a lot of people, very samey to what we had been getting, basically from, I guess, Dino Supercharge to, Beast Morpher season 2. It was very samey in that regard. But I did notice in this rewatch that they were attempting to break away from these mandates that we've, found out, since the show came out, were in place, and that were kind of like remainders of the old regime over at Saban Brands that kind of just carried over into the Hasbro production, because it just did. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize at the time that like they were trying their hard, at least what it looked like, their hardest to break away from these like mandates that had become the norm in the show, and like kind of had made the show feel very strange and very like even odd feeling. And I could tell there was attempts to break away from that in season one. Now Dino Fury season two, um, I did not give enough credit initially for actually taking those steps and doing that, because there was a bit more of an attempt to make things more serialized. Um, you could definitely tell a lot of this. It was being done kind of like under the table, and when certain people weren't paying attention to stuff, you could tell it was the creative team trying to sneak stuff in and just kind of like get something going into the beginning of Dino Fury. And then once season 2 came around, a lot of the old guard was like changing, and or at least we know that now. And so because of that, there's going to be some things that kind of like get missed here and there. So like certain regulations that they had before, the person who was the person to catch that stuff, they're not there anymore, so they're able to do certain things now because someone else isn't there anymore, So I didn't realize that before, and it really is like Cosmic Fury made me realize that the Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury really is an evolution, because the show really does kind of get back to the style of show and writing that I think a lot of older millennial, I'm just going to speak on millennials. I don't know about Gen Z. I don't know what you guys like, but I know a lot of millennials are very, have a lot of fondness for like the Disney era, basically anything before Saban Brands bought the franchise from Disney. And we were kind of, I finally noticed like in this rewatch of Dino Fury that we were getting back to that. It was the problem was it was going very slowly, and I think a lot of people's patience had just run out at this point, because we've been trying to ride so hard for this show for like the last decade, and at every turn it just seems like, oh no, let's take a turn this way and go in a completely different direction that alienates this kind of like built-in fan base we already have, and I'm speaking on the older fans. And we've heard ad nauseum from people in production, people who work at Hasbro, I'm sure, have said this, that the target demographic for Rangers is kids. And that's always been the case. But my thinking as well is I think there's a way to cater to that demographic while also trying to appeal to the one you have built in. And that's like something very unique that like not a lot of shows get, and it's even more so because like all of this stuff is like interconnected. And I think that's why so many people like hold a special tie to like Rangers and stuff like that, is just because everything has been interconnected for like the last 30 years, except for like a couple times. And so that like kind of creates this narrative that because everything is like still taking place in the same world, that the people who watched this back in 1993, this is still for them. And so and that could, that like kind of like gives credence to the whole reboot is necessary for the franchise right now, because of that. because of kind of like the inability to, um, I guess like pick an audience that you want to cater to. I mean, the show has done it the past couple years. It is like the kids are the main demographic, but they have been throwing in a lot of lore things, and there's just, there's a massive consideration, I think, for the adult fans, and I think, the people behind Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury really did their best to incorporate elements that they could, you know, and you could argue back and forth about this all day, like what people's intentions were. The reality is you don't know because you're not those people, and the the way a show gets made, there's so many demands and so many people you have to appeal to, and obviously everything's not going to be for everyone, and I think that's just something more people, including myself, have like needed to accept, and we've been slowly accepting that. And I think there's ways to recognize that things aren't for you, while also simultaneously finding the things in there that are for you and that you do like. So all that to say, generally, what leading up into Cosmic Fury, the Dino Fury rewatch took me a lot longer than I thought it would. I ended up finishing it, like, I think at 1 a.m. on the 29th when Cosmic Fury came out. So I was really trying to, like, get it right to midnight so I could watch episode 1 at midnight, and it just didn't happen. Because I like delayed the Dino Fury rewatch like a day. But yeah, man, like the lead up, like right into it, it was very seamless. And I will say, like, there's so many like behind the scenes like things that went on with this show in particular. Cosmic Fury, and it's just really interesting. Like, there's so many like little tidbits that you can talk about or whatever. One of the most notable things for me was the recreation of all of the sets, or at least most of the sets, because I know like the Rangers base, that was completely built brand new, because by the time they had gotten approved to do Cosmic Fury, they had already torn down all of the old sets, and they even moved studios, I think, in New Zealand to a new building. So they didn't have any of it, so they had to like rebuild everything from scratch. And I think the lighting is maybe like a little bit different, and things maybe feel like a little bit more open because it is supposed to be like a spaceship where like people live now. It's supposed to more look like a place where people live now, and so everything's a bit more warm and stuff. And there's a bit more, like windows and stuff, but it's like stuff we've seen before. And obviously, they probably just had the the set design stuff like still laying around or whatever, and so they could just be like, okay, cool, we have all the measurements, and let's just pull it up again and build it again. So I don't know, to me it's like really impressive that they were able to like change studios and like move to a completely different place and build something that looked pretty much identical to the thing they already had. So yeah, so that was nice. And so I don't want to cover, there's a lot that happens, and I just don't want to go over like every single little detail, just because that would be a lot. But what I did is I just jotted down some character names on a Google Doc, and along with some like just talking points that I, generally wanted to discuss when giving my thoughts on this, and then just kind of let the conversation flow through there, because if you guys know me, you guys know once I'm on any kind of tangent involving this crap, I will just go on something. You know what I mean? So anyway, so the first three characters I have on my little list here is Zato, Amelia, and Ollie. Because what I realized after the second watch through, and I kind of realized this a little bit earlier on, and this is at least the method I think the writers approached this show, is they wrote it with the idea that Zato, Amelia, and Ollie were the main three characters we were going to be focusing on, and that we're going to have big arcs in this season. Which makes the most sense because, and I think a lot of people forget this, they are the core three established in the show. So, I mean, we get Izzy and Javi fairly early on in the show, but, and it's something I picked up on more in the Dino Fury rewatch, is they really kind of drive home that Zato, Amelia, and Ollie are the core three of this team. It is a 6-person team, but those three are the core three of the show. And so I was able to catch more so in Cosmic Fury that they were kind of the focus of everything. Everything that was going on involved them the most. And then Javi, Izzy, and Ion just kind of like took more of a back seat. Not completely, but they just got cool moments as opposed to like full arcs to go through. Because, Ollie had his whole villain arc. Zato had his ascension to becoming a Morphin Master, and then Amelia obviously becoming the Red Ranger. And, all three of those things, with Zato, Amelia, and Ollie, I think they were all done, like, very well. Ollie killed it. Kai killed it as a villain. Ollie is a lot more likable when you're supposed to hate his character. I don't know, like, I think Ollie also is just the perfect type of ranger to have a villain arc, because he is, the smartest of the group. Yeah, and we obviously know this. He's the Blue Ranger, so he's the smart one. He's the problem fixer. The fix it guy or whatever. And so it kind of makes sense for someone who is innately more intelligent than the rest of his teammates to just kind of have this smug attitude once he becomes a villain, because he kind of probably has a superiority complex when it comes to the other Rangers. He did act on it for a good portion of the show in Dino Fury, because he was always like being the logical one or whatever, and being a douche to the other Rangers. And so he did like grow out of that, by the end of Dino Fury, but then we just kind of got to see it resurface and just kind of become twisted and become, I don't know, more pointed, because he meant everything he was saying and doing and all that stuff, and it just kind of, it made sense. If any Ranger on this team had to become evil, Ollie makes the most sense. And he had some very great moments. Excellent character work, I think, just with Zed. The dynamic he had with Zed reminded me a lot of Tommy's dynamic with Rita in the comics. Not so much the show, because the two of them never really interacted on screen, like face to face, except maybe a handful of times. And even then, it was after years of Tommy being a Ranger. So this time around, we kind of got to see that like nurturing of being evil, and like Ollie actually looking to Lord Zed as a mentor figure, which I think was really cool. It was something I really enjoyed, and I'm glad they were able to dedicate a little bit of time to it. Um, Another thing about Ollie being a villain that I really liked, his fucking evil suit, dude. That was so sick. I did not know a thing about it when I cut the screener, and it happened. I saw it, and I was like, "Oh my god, that looks fucking sick." It looks so good. Um, I'm really pissed that someone leaked that like right before Cosmic Fury came out. Whoever did that, I hope your pillow is always warm and it never cools down, because that was a dick move, dude. But it that suit looks so good, and all they did was repaint the Dino Fury Morpher and the Chroma Fury Saber, and I don't know, man, it's so cool. Um, from my knowledge, from what I keep up with, which is not a lot these days, we're getting 3 Cosmic Fury figures. I think a Blue Ranger figure was rumored at some point to be one of those 3. And if it's a Blue Ranger figure, can it be Evil Ollie? Because his Blue Ranger suit, his Cosmic Fury suit, is in 1 episode. We really don't need a figure of it. if we have to pick and choose, because for some reason they thought 3 figures was a good idea when they have 7 Rangers on a team, just for the basic figures. But yeah, if it is a Blue Ranger figure, let's get Evil Ollie, because that suit looks great. That suit just looks great. But yeah, so Ollie had his whole little villain arc, and it was great. I wish we could have gotten a little bit more at the end of him actually like snapping out of it, because basically, like, you know, Ollie switches back, you know, to being good again, and it's the finale. So it would have been nice to have like an episode to like breathe and reintroduce him into the you know, the main Ranger team and all that stuff. But you know, I get it. Obviously, they didn't have time to do that. So next up, we'll talk about. I guess Amelia and Zato just kind of have to go hand in hand. And you know, okay, so I understand. You know, there's a lot of emotions surrounding, you know, what happened with Zato and Amelia, and I definitely agree the way they went about this whole thing was very strange, and I think the whole thing, the entire debate, everything could have benefited from having a person of color consult the writing team before they made any of the choices that they made. Oh, and also maybe consult with the people in charge of the suits and all that stuff, and like, you know, just the corporate people, you know, the people who are in charge of all like the little clerical shit, who make all like the small choices. They like they decide on a color, and that's their paycheck for the week. So I understand there's a lot of like kind of animosity towards Amelia becoming the Red Ranger, and like Zato seemingly, you know, getting a demotion, for lack of a better term, because, you know, it's a trend that's happened in the show. It's stuff that's happened in the show, and you know, I don't want to justify it or anything like that. I don't think it's justified. I think there are there were different choices they could have made that could have made the whole thing come across in a way better manner than it did. You know, from just what I've seen, and this is what I see on a Twitter timeline, so that's not indicative of like what people of color actually appreciate. You know, a lot of people have thrown out the idea of why didn't Zato just become a White Ranger, because it would be kind of like what happened with Tommy, you know, because, you know, when Tommy became White Ranger, he became the leader of the team, blah, 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 all that stuff. And, it's just like little things they could have done to like just really avoid animosity. Um, and I just think it wasn't. It was just people. There's just not enough people of color in these spaces where these decisions are being made, and I think that's just kind of the reality of this entire situation with Zato and Amelia. Because from a story perspective, I thought everything that happened with both of them was great. Zato's ascension to, a Morphin Master was a cool end goal for his character. It does get a little iffy because just kind of the avenue they went about it is kind of weird, because they chose to do this whole thing where he's like becoming weaker because of the magic that he's using from the Morphin Masters, which is kind of a weird way to describe all of that. But I don't know, like having him like pass out and do all of these like things where he just kind of has to be off screen is very weird. And I don't know, it feels like they thought they had to sideline Zato in this way so that way Amelia could shine a little more as Red Ranger. And I don't think you really needed to do that, because Amelia was red. She was already the Red Ranger, and she was already, for the most part, leading the team before Zato got there. And, they kind of have that conversation, before Zato gets his Morpher, of him seeing Amelia as red and just kind of like giving her his blessing and all that stuff. And I don't know, it just could have been a little bit better, I think. And like the weirdest part is just like they were filming it, because it's not like they had to like write him out because of Sentai footage or anything like that. This is a show where they filmed all of the ground fights themselves. Like, you didn't have to write him out of a fight because you could decide to put him in the fight. You just didn't, because like I guess you felt like you couldn't, or you didn't want like these conflicting dynamics on the team or something. I don't know. Like, it seemed very weird. I feel like it could have been a thing kind of similar to, I don't know, like Orico and Delphine with the Alien Rangers, because, Delphine was obviously the established leader of that team, but there were a lot of times like on the ground where like Orico was calling the shots, and obviously that was because of Sentai footage. But I feel like there's a way they could have like co-led and just done that whole thing better without kind of relegating Zato to just being like, oh no, I'm dying again, even though I just got back. So the whole thing was just kind of weird, with Zato and stuff. And but the end goal and all that stuff, and him actually becoming a Morphin Master, is very cool. It makes him, and this isn't even like a joke or anything, like he is the strongest Ranger now, because I mean, like, he's a freaking Morphin Master, dude. So yeah, it's a cool end goal for his character, because it was either this or he's going to be dead. And here we go. He's dead, but he gets to do a lot of cool magic stuff now. And I'm really interested to see if maybe the comics would explore him someday in the future. That'd be kind of cool, just to kind of get like, I don't know, just like a one shot, just kind of about him adjusting to life as this as a Morphin Master, and being like immortal basically, and just kind of having to step aside and just kind of like watch his team and all these other Rangers just kind of like live their lives without him, which is interesting. Um, and also, I don't want to ignore it. Um, they decided to end this show with a meme with Zato saying "cool, cool, coolio," and you know what? I can't even be mad at that because if I were writing for this show, I would have done something exactly like that. Because you know what? Because that is just, and I feel like there were a lot of moments like that in Cosmic Fury, where I kind of feel like the writers were just like, you know what, we're just gonna say this thing because why not? Who is really gonna stop us? And honestly, I love that for them. I think that's great. Um, yeah, I mean that's just iconic. The last line in this universe is "cool, cool, coolio." I think that's great. No one's gonna forget that, and it's iconic. So that's pretty funny. Now, as far as Amelia was fine as Red. She didn't really get to um, have too many like standout moments or anything like that because she wasn't so centered this time around. Because she had already had her conflict and her big, moments in Dino Fury at the end, kind of like right at the end. I didn't realize how late all of that stuff happens with her until I rewatched it. But you know, it made she made I think the most sense stepping into Red. So from what we understand, from what Simon has said, they wanted a female Red, so that was going to happen regardless, and they were deciding between Amelia and Izzy, and they just felt like Amelia was the better option because she was the older character. And that makes sense. And I feel like there was moments in Dino Fury where Amelia displayed enough like leadership potential where she could just kind of stand in. There were like instances where she would stand in for Zato, and so I don't think it was very jarring or anything. It did feel just kind of natural. Once they started doing, everything started going down, that Amelia was just like, all right, I'm just gonna kind of take command of everything. And it made the most sense, because she was like I said earlier, her, Ollie, and Zato are the core three, and with Ollie being evil and Zato getting zapped through a portal, she was the only one left of the core three, and she was the most experienced, except for maybe Ion, I suppose. And so she just kind of like took charge, and so it made sense when she became Red, and I thought it was pretty cool. It was a cool little moment, and especially having the heart-to-heart with Zato, I think that was very important that they did that, because it is, it is different because we have had, Ranger colors change before, and they have, explained it very simply, like, when Zeo happened, the Zeo subcrystals just gave them new colors, and that was it, and Tommy was already the established leader anyway, so there wasn't really any like debating any of that. Whereas this time around, it wasn't so much. That wasn't so much the case because the powers for all of them were created at the same time, except for Farn. So I don't know. It was just it was interesting. It was a interesting way to take her character, and I think it worked out fine. The only thing I really had problems with Amelia is her ADR and just kind of general line delivery was weird. And I don't know if it was a direction like note she was given by like the ADR people or just in general, but I feel like her dialogue was it sounded very different. And I don't know if everyone will understand this reference of this thing I'm about to say, but every time Amelia was in suit and doing her ADR, or Hunter, I guess, every time she was in her, doing her ADR, she sounded like she was narrating a Darman video. So Darman is a YouTuber. He does like little like slice of life, weird sketches. They're very weird. He's a very weird guy. He's very Haim Saban coded in how he operates it on his production. So look him up on YouTube and just watch one of his videos, and I think you'll understand what I mean by that. Because I don't know, it just kind of felt a little stilted, and she was the only one. It was the weirdest thing because she was the only one who sounded different in this show. Everyone else sounded like pretty much normal, and then Amelia just kind of like had this weird tonal shift in how she was delivering certain lines. I'm not sure why that happened, or how that whole thing came about, but it was just weird. It's not like a detriment or like a knock on Hunter or anything like that. It's just something weird because, like, I don't know, it feels like it was something that was added in later, if that makes any sense, because it kind of just feels disjointed in a way from how everything else is, set up, because everyone else just kind of seemed to like fit right back into their places, and then I don't know, Amelia just kind of sounded weird in certain spots. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to mention that. So now we have Javi. We'll go on to Javi next. The next three Rangers are going to be, well, four are going to be a little bit quicker to go through because they didn't really have much going on in this show. They just kind of got to have little moments, not so much full developed arcs. And I guess maybe Javi was like the one who got the most out of these next, few. So Javi lost his arm, and that was, I wasn't sure how they were going to do it. I didn't think they were actually going to get rid of his arm. Like when we saw this thing, like, a long time ago, or heard these rumors of like him getting a new arm or armor or something like that, I just thought it was going to be like a special armor he got because like he got injured in a fight or something like that. But they like went all out. They went full force and just straight up they just straight up like lightninged his fucking arm off and just burned it off completely. Which so from what we understand, from what we've heard, is they were not allowed to depict it in a negative way. The whole thing had to be overwhelmingly positive to like send out a positive message about overcoming odds, as an amputee and all that type of stuff. Which is fine, but also the dude just lost his fucking arm. And so they were able to at least like have like a split second of a moment, but they were able to have it where like he's like going into shock because he's just like, where the fuck is my arm? And so like Billy's like, he's going into shock, and he like gives him his jacket because that will make it better, I guess, for some reason. But so they got to have a little bit of a moment with that, and there was like an adjustment period and like him, being frustrated that his arm didn't work the same anymore. And, the only thing that was a little bit disappointing with that is he didn't get to have a moment with his parents, telling them exactly what happened. They just kind of see the arm. And for the context in which how they see it, I don't think their initial thought would be that Javi has, like, a robot arm. I think it would just look like armor. But I don't know. They seemed like they knew it was a robot arm. And like the weirdest part about that, and I think like just kind of like a missed opportunity for the show, and I just I realized they just probably just didn't have time to do it. Um, Izzy and Javi's parents were the only ones that didn't know about the Rangers, about them being Rangers. Amelia's parents know, and Pop Pop knows. Ollie's mom knows. So it's just like they were really the only ones. I mean, you could say Fern too, but we never saw Fern's parents. So, it felt like it would have been a very good time. I feel like they could have restructured that episode a little bit, and that like moment of them like getting out of the prison to just kind of be a thing where like they reveal their identities to their parents, because then I think that makes the whole conversation and what happened to Javi just make a lot more sense. Um, it's just unfortunate. They were just probably trying to do a lot in that episode, because that was the episode Heckle came back. Um, so, it was cool. They were able to tell a they were able to provide Javi with like some kind of struggle and obstacle to overcome for the season, and it was an interesting way of doing it, and something Power Rangers have never done before. So kudos and props to them, of course, for actually doing it and just being willing enough to just do it. It got to have some cool moments, and like I had a good time with Javi. Now Izzy was like for the most part great, like she always is, but she did kind of have more moments where it was just like, oh man, you're acting kind of weird. She was very like overprotective girlfriend type of thing with Fern, and I feel like this is the type of thing where like that whole thing would have been better if the season was longer and if they had more time. But as it was, they just kind of had to speed run this whole these emotions that Izzy was feeling, for her to just kind of end up really where she should have been from the start, and kind of where she was that she knows Fern is capable of taking care of herself and handling stuff for herself, and so she should be more trusting of that. So it was kind of weird because she did kind of have some awkward moments, but Tessa just kills it as Izzy. So it's really one of those things I'm not gonna like knock on it too much, because her charisma just carries through into the character so well. And Izzy got some really nice little quips here, especially with Evil Ollie. Like, I'm glad she had the most kind of like sassy banter with Ollie when he was evil. Yeah, I mean, Izzy got great lines like she did in Dino Fury, and it was great. She didn't really get to have like as many cool moments as in Dino Fury, but she got like a moment, and just kind of got to have some fun like quips and lines here and there. Now, as far as Ion, I feel like they kind of dumbed him down more in certain spots, because they were trying to, I don't know, I don't think they meant to do this, but there was times where it feels like he was being dumbed down to make someone else appear smarter. It happened once with Amelia. I feel like, when they're having that little heart-to-heart in the kitchen or whatever, and Amelia's like, you seem upset, and it's like, well, yeah, girl, no shit, he's upset. His best friend just got shot into a portal after he came back 5 minutes ago. It was just a weird kind of exchange, and it kind of like painted Ion in this weird light where he wasn't smart or anything like that. I mean, Ion is dumb. This is kind of his character. He is like a little dumb, but I feel like they could have played more on the fact that he is the oldest on the team, and I mean they even say it in the show, and he gets to have like a little moment with Billy, where they kind of like argue about who is the older and more experienced ranger of the two, which is pretty funny. Like, I loved when he's like, look at that young man go. Like, that was really funny. Like, Ion got to have some really funny lines in this season. But there were just a couple weird, like, awkward moments with him. Um, but he did get to have some nice emotional moments with Zato, which was very nice. And, you know, not much else outside of that. He just, he had his whole cafe thing going on, which is like, that's cool, but, obviously they were in space, so that kind of didn't really play much into anything. So, yeah, Ion didn't really do a whole lot. I feel like it was kind of weird. Like, also, they really, like, emphasized Amelia as a Rafkonian more than him, and it's just like, yeah, dude, he's a Rafkonian. We've known about that since he showed up. Amelia was a Rafkonian for the last 2 episodes of Dino Fury. So it's kind of weird where it's like they made it seem like Amelia knows all about being a Rafkonian, and at max it's been like 7 or 8 months, you know, um, especially if her mom is pregnant and all that stuff. So yeah, it was just kind of weird. Ion just kind of he kind of got snubbed in a few parts in the show. It was really weird. Now, as far as Fern was our designated like Gen Z person. Izzy was kind of the girl to do that stuff in Dino Fury, and I feel like they just kind of amped it up a little bit more. So Fern is kind of like the one making all of like the topical pop culture references in her dialogue and stuff like that, and uh, it worked fine for Izzy, I think, but when it came to Fern, it just seemed more on I don't know if on the nose is the right word, but it just seemed more blatant this time around with her. But I mean, I think it was fun, just having her around all the time. I think it got us a better idea of who she actually is, because, even though we do meet her early on in Dino Fury, we don't really get to spend too much time with her, outside of being Izzy's girlfriend. So it was nice for her to kind of have a couple moments, nothing too crazy or long, just to kind of get us to know her a little bit more. And just kind of her arc to becoming a ranger was actually done kind of cool. A little bit samey to like everyone else's, beginning, because she just kind of morphed and was just like, whoa, what just happened? It's just like, which is a trope I'm kind of annoyed with. One thing I really enjoyed about Cosmic Fury is the presentation of their powers. Like, Billy, like, showed up with the morphers and it's just like, here are your new powers. And then it's just like the cosmic orbs came down right into their hands and they got to intentionally morph into the suit. And it wasn't this whole like thing where like they flash and they're just like, what just happened? Because that's literally been the way the Rangers morph ever since pretty much Dino Charge. And it was just a trope that I was kind of over with, and it was just kind of nice to see a return of a proper presentation of the Rangers getting their powers for once. So I mean, that whole thing happened with Fern, and like her being a Ranger is like totally fine. I think it's cool. I wish they could have tweaked the helmet a little bit more so the visor isn't exactly Amelia's. But it is like different on the front, so like the crest and like she has like the horn and stuff going on, so it's a little bit different. But I feel like they could have changed that a little bit more, so that way they could have her be a little bit more distinct amongst the other Rangers. But yeah, I mean, she was cool. Solon was just, I feel like Solon was very samey to how she was in Dino Fury. She was just kind of like the mama bear of the group and just kind of keeping everyone, together and hopeful. So yeah, not much going on with her. Now Billy, loved having Billy back. It was so great to have Billy back for the majority of the season. Um, he really just kind of dips, uh, probably like episode 5. He's there for like the first few episodes, like strong, and then like he dips for like an episode, and he just kind of like shows up like on Skype or whatever, basically. And I think they utilized him well. It would have been great if we could have seen the other Mighty Morphin characters. And that's kind of like a big thing about the show in general, is I wish we could have seen other Rangers interacting with the threat more, because they do a lot of telling us that there's Ranger teams doing all this stuff, but they don't do a lot of showing. And I feel like there maybe could have been like ways to utilize Sentai footage to kind of like illustrate that. But the way this whole production was set up, they just didn't have a lot of time to do stuff. They were on like a very weird time crunch to like do something in a very short amount of time. The whole way this whole production came together is just very weird. And so yeah, I wish we could have seen more, and I think they really did try their best to show us in little ways, because it was cool seeing Billy, it was cool seeing Heckle come back. And then, you got to have that moment in the last episode where the 5 Megazords come in. We get to see the Astro Megazord, the Galaxy Megazord, the Beast X Megazord, and the Ninja Blaze Megazord. Kind of a random choice. And then, the Dino Megazord, of course. So it was cool. Like, that was another moment, during my watch through of the screening, which I didn't know was happening. And when it happened, I'm like, oh, this is sick. This is so cool. Like, and it wasn't a thing where I was like getting hung up on the CGI or anything like that, because the models they were using, I don't know where they got the Dino Megazord model from. That whole thing is very weird. But they were using the Zap model for the Astro Megazord, clearly, because there were like little screw holes on it. But I mean, that's just so indicative of like the Tokusatsu style and stuff, is just like it's just kind of like a modern twist on it. Toei uses toys as props all the freaking time. So Power Rangers did too, just in a different way. And that was a super cool moment. Seeing Heckle in the show was fantastic. It was cool that they brought him in as the Dark Ranger. They weren't able to delve into too much like how he got to the main universe. But I mean, if there's one thing we know is at this point, is that Ranger teams communicate with each other across dimensions. So you could infer that Grid Battle Force or Tarek made contact with the Dino Charge Rangers and was just like, hey, we need someone on the inside who can like that these people don't know, that could like infiltrate this whole thing. And so you can headcanon it pretty easily, that Heckle just portaled in from the Dino Charge dimension, and it was just like, all right, I'm gonna fuck around here now and pretend to date this alien for a couple days. Now, as far as Tarek and Centaura didn't do anything. Centaura was pregnant and had a baby and was photoshopped very badly in a picture at the end. Her actress was like ready to pop at the end of Dino Fury, because her actress was actually pregnant during the show, and that's why she was like always wearing like baggy clothes and all that stuff. So so I mean, they kind of didn't really do anything with her. She was just pregnant, and that was just kind of her bit. Tarek, we got to see just kind of be a badass and just kind of be hot. I mean, that was just always going to happen because Tarek's hot. But uh, you know, some people have said like, oh, it would have been cool if Tarek got to morph or something like that, or maybe got like the Dino Knight morpher again somehow. And if the season was longer, I would say yes, but I think just, you know, with him being with the Rafkonians for like half a year or something like that, and just kind of, you know, kind of being a capable fighter already, you know, being able to handle the Rangers and stuff. It was a little bit more satisfying just kind of seeing him kick ass, not as a Ranger. Because I don't know, like, it was just like really satisfying. Um, Especially when he got like, I think his Wizo is the guy's name, the little bird monster dude with the accent. It was just kind of badass seeing him just like strike this monster down and just having him explode. And Tarek is just unmorphed. I don't know. That's just really cool. It's really satisfying to me. And, you know, I didn't need him to morph. It wasn't that big of a deal for me. He kind of already got to have his time, you know, wearing a suit. And that's perfectly fine. Uh, Now, changing gears, we're kind of like at a halfway point of like villains and stuff like that because we're talking about Tarek. But let's go ahead and switch to the villains because I love the villains in this show. Um, you know, I feel like they've been really struggling to like find the balance of comedy. They want to do comedy amongst the villains, and just the villain characters that we've had the past like 5-6 years have just not been very good. Um, you know, they started trying to do it with Sledge's crew, and the biggest point of contention I have with Sledge's crew is that all of them are stupid. Like, and not like I think their ideas are stupid. The idea of them is stupid. It's just they are all actually stupid characters and actually incompetent because they they did nothing for like millions upon millions of years. They're all really dumb. And that's just how they are as characters. And so whenever they tried to do like comedy bits with them, like when Dino Charge was going on or when they came back in Beast Morphers, I wasn't something I vibed with because I'm just like, these people are all idiots. I just want them off my screen because they're stupid and I'm tired of looking at them. Whereas this time around, uh, you had Bajilia and Squilia as the new villains, of which Bajilia and Squilia Nair, which fantastic wordplay, love that. Um, they were very clearly evil. At the very least, Bajilia was. You know, Squilia was just kind of stupid. A little. She was just kind of like the Valley Girl, the annoying Valley Girl. But for some reason, for her, like I just thought it was endearing. I thought it was just really funny. And then Bajilia does a lot of fucked up shit, you know, in this show. You know, like right at the beginning, she's like, 40 scientists died just to bring Zed back. She didn't say destroyed, she says died. And I think that's like a big thing in Rangers that like not a lot of people have been talking about. You know, and we get to kind of see her be this evil CEO. There's a lot of comedic overtones with her and just kind of the rest of the villains generally, but it it was done really well, and at no point did I think she wasn't a credible threat. And I think that was the biggest thing for me is we've had villains be like so like slapsticky and they have to be funny all the time that when it comes time for them to do actual bad guy stuff, I'm like, are you guys actually capable of doing that? Whereas this time around with Bajilia, I didn't really have those doubts because she was awful, but she just was just surrounded by a bunch of, you know, people doing funny shit. That was kind of what it was for me. Um, and speaking of Bajilia and Squilia, they brought in the Sentinels, which fantastic name. That's a fantastic name. I'm sorry, they're great. The Sentinels got to have like little personalities. It's very rare, I feel like, that the foot soldiers actually get to have distinct personalities or at least emote in any kind of way about what's happening with them. and they went full on stormtrooper with the Sentinels, let them all speak, most of the time, uh, and we got to have some really funny moments, just like moments where they're like talking to each other, like. But Bajilia just teleports away from the Squidrow when it's getting ready to explode, and then just like, I hate when she does that. It's like great moments, like so much, like that is like the perfect balance of like comedy amongst like your villains, and like they really nailed it with the villains in this season and trying to do comedy. I feel like they were like workshopping it for a really long time, and they were like starting to find their way with Slither and Mucus, because I did find them a little bit more endearing when I rewatched Dino Fury. But then when we got to Cosmic Fury and seeing all the new villains in the show, I think they finally hit their stride with the villains being funny but evil at the same time. You know, there were a couple weird things. Scrozzle is still around. Scrozzle teleports away. Scrozzle is just alive still. I don't know why. Scrozzle is a robot. They could have blown him up multiple times. I don't know why they did what they did, but it's whatever. He got to kind of just be... Scrozzle is just kind of the finster of the group, but just not as endearing. So he was just kind of a guy that built shit. But yeah, man. And then that leads us to Zed, which... first of all, his voice. I guess we should start with his voice. This Fred something or other. I'm not sure what the guy's name is, actually. I know it's Fred something. Apparently he's a big deal in the Star Trek fandom. I don't know anything about Star Trek, so I don't know. And apparently he's voiced a bunch of other... He's very notable in the voice acting space. I just had never heard of him before I watched Cosmic Fury. And I feel like his interpretation of Zed was closer than Andrew Lang's interpretation was, because Andrew Lang was kind of doing Evox just a little bit deeper, and it just kind of wasn't hitting. Even when I did my rewatch of Dino Fury, I still wasn't really vibing with his voice. But Fred's interpretation of Zed, I think, was closer. I think the only thing that was actually missing wasn't really anything to do with him. I think it was more so a post-production thing. I think they needed to add kind of like a bass into his voice, just kind of like a bassy reverb to just kind of like round out the sharpness and the height in his voice. And I feel like that would have given the voice exactly what it needed to catch that classic Zed feel. So, but it was great. He got to have some really great moments. We got to kind of like get to know Zed by himself a little bit more, because Zed in Mighty Morphin just kind of quickly became just kind of like a foil to Rita, or Rita kind of became a foil to him, where they just kind of like balanced each other out, and they kind of became like, a package deal, and you couldn't really see one without talking about the other. But I feel like this was the first time in the show, at least, I know the comics have gone into this a little bit more, where we got to kind of like see Zed's personality a little bit more, where he wasn't just the Emperor of Evil, where he was actually, we got to see like his motivations and his reasoning and his logic behind everything that he does. And I feel like we didn't really get a lot of moments like that in Mighty Morphin. So it was kind of cool to be able to kind of get these moments with Zed. And the conclusion with him, I think it was a twist that was interesting. And I think when it comes to like Rangers and Tokusatsu and stuff like that, I think people have a lot of like expectations on how certain things will play out And these are expectations I still have too, and so when the creative team deviates from those expectations, it is kind of jarring for me. So I think like we all kind of expect as Toku fans for them to do one big boss fight with the big bad in his powered up form for the for the season or whatever. Do this big fight. There's a bunch of explosions. The team finally works hard, and the power of teamwork, is able to take down the big bad of the season. He explodes, and that's it. The day is saved, and everything is over with. And that's great, but I kind of appreciated the idea of not doing that and them just being like, no, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and we're going to have like this conversation basically with Zed, and just being like, listen, and like kind of present this threat that is going to affect Zed too. And just kind of, it's conflict resolution in a different way that is very different for an action centric franchise like Power Rangers. And I don't know, for me, like, it was kind of nice. Their whole thing, their way of resolving the conflict was to convince the bad guy, work with us so that way you can survive. And I don't know, like, it was such an interesting way to go about it. And it was probably a thing they did because, from what we understand, the Master Zed suit, which looked sick, by the way, fantastic, that looked super cool. It was apparently very fragile, so they probably weren't going to be able to do much with it, and they probably wouldn't have had much time to repair it if they had to like do stuff with it, like stunts and all that. So I don't know, like, I really appreciated the way they went about it. And then to kind of like, put him on Nibiru, where he's basically stuck in a nightmare forever. I don't know, like, I understand where people are coming from, where it's not so much of a finite ending for this big character that they brought back. But I think it's more interesting than just simply blowing up the bad guy, because it's like, I don't know, like, it's just interesting to think about. Like, the only way Zed will ever be able to escape Nibiru is if he is able to change who he is and become someone who is noble. And that's just so much more interesting than him just being dead, I think. Yeah, it's just, yeah, and I understand. It's like some people are just really used to like the formula and stuff, and like the finite ending of like, the day is saved, the bad guy's been destroyed, and the day is saved thanks to the Power Rangers. But I don't know, man. It was interesting, just kind of going about that whole thing in a different way. It was also interesting that he wasn't the main goal. Zed was a pawn in the whole bad guy thing, and Bajilio was just kind of pulling the strings the whole time. The way they went about the villain dynamics this season was very different, and I really enjoyed it. And just like the plan they had, doing kind of the reverse Z wave, great idea. I don't know, man. Yeah, it was so much more interesting than like some other seasons where they have so many more episodes and so much more time, to do stuff with the villains, and they just don't do anything. So yeah, man, I think it was great. The stuff with the villains was all really great. I loved all of it. I'm gonna be honest, like, I really loved the villains. Slider and Mucus coming back. They're not really villains anymore. They're good guys now, which I guess is fitting. I mean, it is kind of a weird jump, but I mean, they're ultimately harmless. and I did find myself enjoying Slither a lot more in Dino Fury on my rewatch, and even Mucus to a slightly lesser extent, um, because they just hit that like in between of almost being stupid like Sledge's crew, but they were just competent enough, I feel, where they weren't as bad as them. So they kind of, and then they had the benefit of being in this show where it just kind of like elevated them to, I don't know, just better graces for me. And so I really enjoyed seeing them in this show. So, yeah, man, I think that's all the characters. Jesus Christ, I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. I haven't been talking about the characters. Goddamn. Okay, so just a few little, just kind of quick notes I just kind of wanted to talk about. These are more like random and not like, I feel like I went pretty structured with everything just now. So I already talked about that. Okay, so the Zords. Let's talk about the Cosmic Zords. So, a big point of contention for people is that the Cosmic Fury suits do not match the Cosmic Fury Zords. And so my whole thing with the Cosmic Fury Zords is they were just tools, really. The way the whole thing with those was handled, I think, was really great. I get why they picked those now, because the 3D models for that, for all of those Zords, they don't need to move. So if you gotta do some like extra 3D modeling, for some original footage, I'm gonna 3D model the shit that doesn't need to move very much. You know what I mean? So after watching this, I definitely understand why they picked the Kyuranger Zords a little bit more, and I'm just kind of glad we got the ones we did. We got more than I thought we were going to get, if I'm honest. I thought we were just going to get Kureno and be done, but they were like, nope, you're going to get 11 Zords, and you're going to like it. And you know what? That's fine. Because it wasn't that big a deal. I feel like everyone, like, it's this thing where, like, people are so conditioned to, like, how Toku does certain things that when a show finally does something different, everyone's just like, well, what the fuck are you doing? Whoa, 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 stop it. And it's just like, guys, they can do stuff differently. And I feel like in this show, they finally treated the Zords as what they are. And that they're just vehicles that the Rangers pilot. There's nothing that requires them to always be in certain Zords or anything like that. And having that whole remote pilot thing, and the Rangers just kind of Zord hopping, for lack of a better word, throughout the show, was just nice. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't something they were worried about. There were times where the Shark Zord was in the formation and the Camellia Zord was in the formation as well, but Izzy was in the Shark Zord for some reason, and like Ion was in something else, and it was just like they weren't adhering so strictly to those restrictions that they had to do before because of Sentai footage, really, because it's really not that big a deal. And in terms of like the power set and all that stuff, when it comes to the suits, I kind of headcanon it in this way where it's like the Zords are basically these cars that have just been sitting, for years, and the Rangers just hopped in them one day and just rode them off into the sunset, and so when Billy was making the powers and stuff like that, he was using the Dino Fury keys, and obviously he had already piloted one of the Cosmic Zords and stuff like that, so he was just trying to like you can headcanon it. Like Billy has built power sets before. This is a thing that we know he does. Um, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, Billy was just kind of like combining the aesthetics of the Dino Fury suits that the Rangers previously had and basically had lying around because their Dino Fury stuff was, reacting to the Morphin Master staff. And he just kind of cosmicified them a little bit. So I don't know, man. I think people hold too much weight on the Zords and the Rangers like needing to look like each other, and that I don't think that really needs to be the case. They have the orb, to like match the Zord a little bit, and that's kind of it. That's kind of all they have in common, and that's perfectly fine with me. I think everyone could stand to like drop this like mentality around, the Zords and the Rangers having to be so strictly intertwined with one another. I'm sure when Sentai gets around to doing that in like 10 years, everyone will be singing their praises ad nauseum. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because that was the thing. I know the Zords were like a big deal for people. It's not. I don't care. I don't care. The only thing I care about is now I have to get Ryuteo and a couple of the other ones. More Q-Ranger mech than I thought I would ever have to get. And we'll see if they actually end up doing the Cosmic Dragon Megazord and the toy line. I who even knows? The way they're doing this whole toy line for this show is very fucking weird. And this kind of goes into my next point. So, like, we've heard Simon do a lot of talking, like, more so than normal, because he can talk about everything now. And just kind of like the general vibe I'm interpreting from all of these stories and everything that he's telling us is it seemed like Hasbro wanted to make something when it came to Cosmic Fury, but they wanted to make it as quickly and as cheaply as possible. But then it seems like they kind of didn't want to do it because they only have 3 things planned out in the toy line, like the action figures, that roleplay set with Zato, and the freaking Morpher. Oh, and I guess the Zords. So I don't know. The way Hasbro seems to have approached Cosmic Fury is so weird because it seems like they've had 1 foot in and 1 foot out the whole time. And they couldn't decide if they wanted to like press the gas on moving forward with a thing, like with trying to push this thing. Because we've also heard that Hasbro was the person, or the side that wanted to do 10 episodes, because Netflix apparently was on board with doing 20 episodes of Cosmic Fury. They were willing to do 20 episodes of Cosmic Fury. They were like, yeah, sure. I mean, if you guys want to do 20 episodes, go for it. But Hasbro were the ones who were like, we'll just do 10. We'll just do 10 this time around. So it's just, it's so weird. Because it's like, it's so, I don't know. It seems like they wanted to keep something around for the 30th anniversary. And then it's like they're doing this break now. And I think that's kind of the mindset, the mentality going into Cosmic Fury is what led to this break that we're getting ready to have. Because they just clearly don't know what direction they want to go yet. So they're just kind of like stepping back completely until they figure out what they want to do. So I don't know. The whole thing around it is just very weird, and I don't really get it. But it is what it is, it's fine. At the end of the day, Cosmic Fury turned out great, I think. I think it was a fun time. My last little point on this is about Simon Bennett. And, there was a huge, overproportionate amount of discourse over something he said that was completely misconstrued and misunderstood. Um, kind of dissing the ability for Tokusatsu to like play a role in Power Rangers. And my biggest thing with that whole conversation when it was happening is, the thing is, Simon Bennett does not know what Tokusatsu is. He doesn't. He wasn't familiar with Rangers or Sentai or anything like that before he got this job. And a lot of people say that's like blasphemy, like how could someone do that? And there are so many shows, pretty much every show. No one is like a fan of something for the most part before they start working on something. That's just kind of how that industry works. And I don't know, people got really gatekeepy with how that, with creative people coming in, being unfamiliar with the thing that they're working on. And it's like, dude, that happens all the time. And the times that's happened in Power Rangers is when we've gotten shakeups and like really cool stuff happening in the show. So I don't know, people in general have just been very weird with this man. I think it'll be very nice to, kind of take a step back in the next year or whatever, and just kind of not have this back and forth with the executive producer of Power Rangers and the fandom all the time on the timeline. It's fantastic that he's so transparent and willing to talk to the community about stuff. That's great. I love that he feels that comfortability and that he is, he had such a good time on the show that he wants to talk about it with other people, especially with people like us who like care about this thing a lot and just kind of like knowing the nitty gritty about everything and how the process works. But I don't know. I just feel like it just could be too much sometimes, and just the way the community just acted sometimes, I just feel like it was very immature, and I think there was a level of immaturity on both sides. I don't think I don't think Simon Bennett was totally infallible in all of the stuff that was going on. But yeah, I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, Simon Bennett doesn't really know what Tokusatsu is, so I don't think there's really much weight there when people like hear someone like him talking about like removing these Tokusatsu elements from Rangers, because it's like Tokusatsu elements were like perfectly intact in Cosmic Fury. It's just the elements that are Tokusatsu, Simon Bennett doesn't know that's what Tokusatsu is. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, it's just one of those things, man. He doesn't know about something, and he's just like kind of taking the whole thing very literally, and people have just kind of misconstrued that and turned it into something that it's not, and just think that he hates like Tokusatsu or Rangers or whatever. And it's like, dude, he can just enjoy working on the thing that he did and not give a fuck about anything else he did on the anything else that the franchise did ever again. Plenty of people who have worked on the show have done exactly that. Eddie Gazalian, another great example of someone who did exactly that. He worked on his RPM bullshit, and then he never talked about the show or any of the other shows ever again. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly valid. And I think people need to, I don't know. I think people are just kind of very emotionally charged because of what's going on with Power Rangers right now. And just, this was, the end of an era, at least for now. We'll see. I don't know. The plans are so wishy-washy with Power Rangers. We'll probably hear about a show We'll probably hear about a Sentai adaptation like next month after the SAG strike is over or something like that. I mean, who even knows anymore? But this is supposed to be like a bookmark. I don't think it's an end. I think it's just a bookmark in Power Rangers story right now, and we're just in a weird spot. People are, for a lot of people, Rangers is like their big thing, and for me, it's my big thing too. Obviously, I got a lot going on with it, but that just means you gotta find other things, and I realize that's hard, especially when you're an adult, because that means you have to put yourself out there more, and like try stuff. And the thing about trying stuff is you may not always like doing it, and you might find out that the thing you're trying isn't for you anyway, and so you don't stick with it. So it's a lot of trial and error, and I think when you're an adult, you really want to avoid stuff like that, and I think a lot of us have a drive to like maintain some comfortability to an extent, and there's comfort in our hobbies and stuff like that. And when it comes to something like this, where it's like, oh dang, this thing I'm really invested in is kind of like stopping, and I have to do something else with all my time now. There's a level of insecurity there, and just being afraid, because we don't want things to change, but that's just life, man. You grow up and things change, and I think as you get older, you get more and more comfortable with it. It's weird. It never is not weird when watching things change, but you get used to it, and you just kind of make peace with it. So, but anywho, I've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes, and I would really like to stop. So I think we're going to cap it off for here. There we go. That's a better way to say that. So I don't know if people have been in the chat. I have not seen the chat do anything since I hit record or stream or whatever button I pressed to start doing this. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little thing with me talking about Cosmic Fury. I had a really good time with this show, you guys. I gotta be honest, I really enjoyed it. Just seeing Power Rangers operate basically completely outside of the box that it is under when Sentai is in the equation. There was Zord footage in this, but it was very inconsequential to the story they were telling, and it was just kind of cool to see Power Rangers production have the reins in terms of creative decisions for like what they wanted to do with their story, and it was just such a fun ride. I think this is the type of thing, because it's so short, I'm gonna revisit it pretty frequently, and yeah, man, it wasn't without its faults. There's definitely things I wish they could have done differently, and I think if they had like maybe a couple more episodes, I feel like a lot of those problems I had with the show could have been resolved. Not all of them, but I think there were some things that could have definitely been salvaged. But I mean, it's definitely a good place for Rangers to end at for now, and then we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the future, man. We'll just see what happens. That's all we can do. But yeah, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion tonight. If you guys are listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of those other places, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review for the podcast, I would appreciate that. And yeah, man, I think that'll be it, because I'm trying to figure out what my next sentence is going to be, and It is not turning out good because I'm starting to blank out. So I better stop talking before I say something dumb. So thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. And I'll see you next week for another Friday night chill.